Welcome and thank you for joining this session on cybersecurity playbook for small and medium businesses. When we hear about cyber attacks in the news, it's usually the big breaches that make the headlines. So global companies losing millions, ransomware shutting down hospitals, or major retailers having customer data leaked. And they're usually the big ones that we hear about, and we find them quite shocking. But the truth is, small and medium businesses are often the most vulnerable because attackers know that many small and medium businesses don't have the same resources or dedicated IT teams and controls that larger organizations do. So today we'll focus on practical steps, not big, expensive solutions, but 10 actions that you can start today that dramatically improve your security. Think of it as more of a recipe book for cyber hygiene almost. So by the end, you'll be able to walk away knowing not just what to do, but why it matters and how to put some of those things into practice in your business. So here's what we'll cover. So first we'll look at everyday habits, the simple, repeatable actions that can prevent the majority of attacks. Then we'll shift to people and practices because technology alone isn't enough. Your team plays a crucial role, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But really, people can be where some of the main weaknesses are. Then we'll cover devices and detection. So how to secure the hardware we rely on every day and make sure that we're able to notice suspicious activity actively. And finally, we'll explore response and recovery, because even with the best defenses, incidents will still happen and preparation is key. So as I mentioned, by the end, you'll have a playbook of 10 practical steps that you can implement immediately. So let's begin then with everyday habits. So these small routine actions form the foundation of your organization's cyber health. They don't require expensive tools or specialist knowledge, but when done consistently, they can block a surprising number of attacks. You'll see that none of these habits are complicated. The challenge isn't in knowing them, it's in making them second nature for both you and your team. And like I said, people will be kind of the key theme throughout this workshop, in that is where a lot of the weaknesses can be found. So firstly then, we're looking at strong passwords and multi-factor authentication. I'm sure a lot of, most people have heard about MFA. So passwords are the front door, obviously, to our whole digital life. Yet too often people still use passwords like password 123 or the name of their dog, or, something really obvious that, can be guessed. And we're still seeing it now. People, write passwords down on Post-it notes and stick them to their desk, the classic things. So attackers know that people use simple passwords, and they use these, not very complex automated tools to guess those passwords and test millions of common passwords in seconds. It's really, really easy for them. So kind of teaching people about using a strong password and having those strong password policies in place is key. So the problem is many people also reuse the same password across multiple accounts. And I'm sure many people are guilty of this. We've all done that at some point, but that is one of the key problems, because that means that if one site gets hacked, say an online shopping account, let's say, attackers can try to use the same password on email, cloud storage, payroll systems, everything, because they know that people do that. The key term for that is called credential stuffing. And it works far too often because people are using these same passwords. So what can we do? We can use strong, unique passwords for every account. And obviously that's really difficult when, we've all got about 100 accounts. We're all signed up for tons of different things. So how do you remember all of those passwords? Well, that's where a password manager is essential. So instead of remembering those 50 different combinations, you just remember one master password and the tool does the rest. It's a really useful thing to have, and I see many businesses, more and more businesses rolling it out now. And then secondly, and I think most importantly, is multi-factor authentication. So MFA obviously adds a second step of authenticating to get into an account. So maybe a code sent to your phone, an app notification, or even a fingerprint on some devices. So it's like, you know, adding kind of a deadbolt to a digital door almost. So then even when if your password's stolen, there's still that second element of them not, an attacker not being able to get in. I would say if there's kind of one action that you take away from today, then making sure MFA is enabled on accounts where it can be and getting a password manager is probably the key one that you want to take away. So now we'll move on to keeping systems updated. So we've all seen those little pop-ups that come up in the bottom right-hand side of our screen that say updates available. And let's be honest, most of us click remind me later or postpone for 8 hours, and we keep postponing until we're absolutely forced to restart our laptop. The trouble is those updates often fix known security holes or vulnerabilities. And attackers, again, know that, so they actively scan the internet looking for unpatched systems that they can exploit. So if you think of it like this, if you don't fix a broken lock on your front door, you can't be surprised if then someone tries to walk in, and that's exactly what attackers do. They know those vulnerabilities are out there. They're very aware of when, you know, a new vulnerability is noticed or a new vulnerability is being put out there, and they will actively go and find those pretty much straight away. So the quicker systems are updated and patched, the better. The good news is that updates are one of the easiest defenses. So most operating systems and apps now let you enable automatic updates. That means you don't need to think about it. The system patches itself. There obviously is always going to be a human kind of element in that as well, but it is really good that you can actively enable automatic patching, automatic updates, and that's done automatically for you. So the action here is really simple. Turn on those automatic updates wherever possible and schedule time with IT technicians, whoever you've got that helps in that kind of area for the bigger updates, because they are there as well. So there will always be a human element there that's needed as well. So it's a really small effort to enable these automatic updates, but it closes a big window of opportunity for attackers. So backing up data, ransomware, which is where criminals lock your files away and demand a payment to unlock them. It's a very common kind of attack. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that. It's one of the most common attacks today. But if you have a good backup system, then ransomware loses its power because you don't need the criminals to unlock those files. You have them backed up and you can restore to a certain point. So the key principle here is the 3-2-1 rule. So keep 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media with 1 stored off-site, usually in the cloud. Backups are only useful, however, if they work. So I've seen businesses discover during a crisis that their backup hadn't run properly in months. So when they came to restore a backup, they didn't have up-to-date backups. They had backups from months ago. So those 3 months of work, let's say, had been completely lost. So again, the key thing here is test your backups. Don't just rely on, oh yes, we're backing up to the cloud, so it should be absolutely fine. The key thing is those backups have got to be tested. So set it as a monthly task, a quarterly task, however you see that risk, however much you see as whether that risk is high or low to your business, set those monthly tasks or quarterly tasks to make sure that those backups are tested. And just try restoring a file once in a while, just to make sure that they are there and they are working. again, it's one of those things you hope your business will never need them, and in hindsight, you're like, oh, yeah, it'll be absolutely fine. We'll never need it. We just do it because that's the thing to do. But it could, in the event of a crisis, really save your business. So now we'll move on to people and practices. So technology is obviously only part of the story. As I've mentioned before, the human element is often the weakest link. And attackers know this. That's why phishing, those fake emails or texts that trick you into clicking a link, remains the number one entry point into the breaches. So this section is about empowering your people, setting the right policies, and building a culture of security awareness. So training employees, again, really one of the key things that has got to be done. That is, like I said, it's where the biggest weakest link is. So no firewall antivirus can stop an employee clicking on a convincing phishing email. I'm sure, a lot of people have been caught out in this, and they become more and more sophisticated every day. That's why training is so important. It doesn't need to be long or boring because people are just not going to buy into that. Short, regular sessions are more effective than a once a year lecture, let's say. And I think the key thing is simulations. So sending fake phishing emails to staff to test their awareness and to test their knowledge, and to see how they respond to those simulations is a fantastic way to kind of build a better culture around that. And speaking of culture, people need to feel safe in admitting their mistakes. If someone clicks on a bad link, you want them to report it quickly, not hide it out of fear. And I see that a lot as well. A lot in larger organizations, but it does exist in smaller organizations as well. People are fearful of admitting that they have done something wrong. So if you can really focus on creating that culture where people feel safe to say, hold their hand up and say, yes, I've done this, I think that could, it saves a lot of time and could save a lot of hassle down the line. Early reporting gives you time to respond before damage spreads. That is the key thing here. So training isn't just about knowledge, it's about creating a workplace where cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. And again, another key thing, roll that responsibility out to each individual member of staff. It's not just the IT guy's responsibility for cybersecurity. It's not just the security guy's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility because everyone plays a part in keeping the business safe. There are also some really good training platforms out there that don't cost a lot of money that can help with phishing simulations, short video clips. This is what to look out for. And I always think they're a really good investment. Securing Wi-Fi networks. So Wi-Fi is basically the invisible gateway to your business. If it's not secure, attackers can get in without knowing where your office is, without ever stepping foot in your office. So at a minimum, we should use WPA2 or WPA3 encryption with strong passwords. Again, these key things will feed into all these different areas. Strong passwords again. One of the things that always comes up quite a bit is people buy infrastructure, buy kit, buy pieces of IT equipment, and they don't change the default password. Again, attackers know that. They can find the default passwords online. So don't leave the default passwords on routers. Always make sure that whenever you install a new piece of kit, those default passwords are changed, because attackers, again, know that people don't change it and will try those default passwords across thousands of systems. And also, another key point here is to always separate guest Wi-Fi from your business network. You don't just want anyone that visits your office, let's say, to join your secure network. Who knows what they're carrying on their laptop, on their phone. They could have malware, which then infects your systems. So being able to separate your guest Wi-Fi from your secure Wi-Fi is very, very key. And and keeping those separate, because that, like I said, you don't want people infecting your secure network. These things can be quite technical things to do, but IT technicians should know what they're doing here. So they are things that can be implemented. So access control, again, I'm sure we've all heard of this. It's quite a big thing in cybersecurity, and is also plays a key part in some of the key certifications, Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, those gold standards of, keeping your data secure, basically. So, and it's one of the simplest ways to limit damage is making sure that people have the right access. So the idea is pretty straightforward. People should only have access to things that they need to do their job, and that is it. I've seen many things in the past, but if everyone has administrator rights, then a single compromised account can bring down the entire business. So making sure that people don't have those admin rights are only granted to a few users as and when required, is really important. If permissions are limited, the damage can be contained. So by applying the same principle, you reduce that risk. So making sure that you've got things in place like a joiners, movers and leavers policy to ensure the correct access is provided, whether someone starts, whether someone changes role, and making sure their access is revoked when they leave is really important. And then secondly, reviewing those access rights, because although you might have a policy in place, that says, okay, well, when someone leaves, the following day we'll remove their access. Obviously, mistakes happen. So having those regular tasks of reviewing access and making sure that things have been done is really important and can prevent a much further issue down the line. So now we'll look at devices and detection. So every laptop, phone and tablet is a potential entry point for an attacker. And with remote work, the boundary between home device and work device is, blurrier than ever. I think post-COVID, we're all still kind of getting used to a lot more remote work, everyone working from home, people wanting to be able to do things on their own devices, more companies allowing access for employees to access their emails on personal devices. So it's a growing topic, and securing these devices is essential. So protecting devices and endpoints. So think of every device as a kind of door to your business. If one is left wide open, then attackers will find it. Again, it's the same thing throughout all of these steps that can be implemented. They are, if you don't do them, that you're kind of leaving it open for an attacker to be able to infiltrate there. So with this, so what's the fix? So start with the basics: antivirus, disk encryption, and lock screen policies. Real kind of simple, basic things that should be implemented. So requiring a fingerprint or a Face ID or a PIN on mobile devices, not making sure that anyone can pick it up and get straight into your business data. And these are things that when you have things like a Microsoft Intune, and when you enroll devices through that, you can put these controls in place. Equally with Intune, you want to have it so that you can make sure that devices can be remotely wiped. So let's say you enroll employee devices, an employee's personal phone, let's say, and you enroll that onto your Intune. You want to be able to make sure that if that employee's phone is stolen, then you are able to remotely remove the company data from there. And it's really important, obviously, with, theft of, especially in big cities, of mobile phone devices on the rise, then it's making sure that you're able to put those controls in place to be able to protect your business data. And it's not just about company laptops. I think we always think, oh, when you think of devices and where the biggest risks are, I think most people think it's, just company laptops, and it isn't. I think it does include personal devices that are used for email and messaging, such as phones. So it's really important to make sure that we have those controls in place to do that. So now we'll look at monitoring. So prevention is necessary, of course, but detection is just as important. So attacks still happen, and the faster you can spot them, the less damage they're going to cause. So even basic monitoring helps. Of course, there are, huge companies out there that provide these big SOC monitoring platforms that monitor all of your network data. But for some organizations, that's just not feasible, and it's not it's not where they want to invest their money. But there are basic monitoring tools. Most cloud systems like Microsoft 365 let you set up alerts for unusual logins, failed login attempts, or suspicious downloads. There are a lot of tools available on different license types in Microsoft 365, and it's worth looking around at some of those tools to see what works for your business. Microsoft Defender is a great tool to have. And again, you're able to enable monitoring of certain things on your network, which can prevent an attack if someone's there, actively monitoring these alerts. So then finally on the agenda, we'll look at response and recovery. So no system is perfect. Even big companies with massive budgets still get breached. The difference between a disaster and a minor incident is preparation. I think even recently in the news, we've seen some really big companies get caught out, although we'll never really know the root cause of everything. But, you've seen Jaguar Land Rover, companies like Colt, they've been caught out. So it really is about preparation in how we're going to manage these incidents when they happen. And it's been said a lot, but it really is a question of not if, but when. So every business, no matter how small, should have a simple incident response plan. It doesn't need to be a 50-page document that no one wants to sit through in the middle of an incident and try and find what they need to do. A single page with some clear steps is enough and can prove vital in the event of an incident. And just have that ready for key members of staff. So you should have like kind of a incident response team that should be able to pick up this one-page document and know who to call or what to do in the event of an incident. It really is a key document. Things like who do you call if there's a suspected breach, who decides whether to shut down systems, how do you notify your customers if their data is at risk. These aren't really questions that you want to be trying to find the answer to for the first time during an incident or a crisis. What you should be doing is writing them down now so that you can act quickly and calmly when it matters the most if the incident does occur. So we put together a simple kind of 5-step checklist that you can adapt in the event of an incident. So if we just run through those, so you've got contain the threat, such as disconnecting the affected device, notify somebody who can make decisions or changes, usually an IT or security lead that can help. One of the really key things is preserve the evidence. So this is really key in the event of an insurance claim. I think I've certainly seen in the past where it's happened and you've got evidence of a breach and it may have been deleted out of fear that, that evidence might still be infected or something like that. But the key thing is that evidence has got to be preserved. If you've contained that device, then that evidence has got to be preserved. It really does make a difference with the insurance claim. And then recover. So as we were talking earlier about backups, you want to be able to make sure that you can restore to the latest possible hour or day. So however often your backups are, let's say they are daily, you want to be able to restore to the day or the day before that the incident happened, rather than, a few months ago. So again, making sure that those backups are clean, ready to go, and in working order is really key. And then finally, review. So learn and improve. Learn from the errors that may have led to the event and put in place controls that prevent them from happening again. This is a really simple checklist, but it covers the essentials. So having this checklist on hand means you can move quickly, even under pressure. Again, these are the 5 key steps. So you could even base your kind of incident response plan around this and use these 5 key steps to help with that. So to wrap up, cybersecurity isn't about kind of chasing perfection. We'll never get to 100% secure. There will always be known holes and vulnerabilities that attackers can use. It's about being prepared, and hopefully this workshop has given you some key controls that can be implemented to help protect your business. If you apply these 10 practical steps on the screen now, you'll make life much harder for attackers. And most importantly, you'll give yourself confidence that you can keep operating even if something goes wrong. So what I would do is I encourage you to pick one of those actions today. Maybe it's enabling MFA or setting up a backup running procedure or running a staff training session, and implement this to improve your security posture. So just some of the key messages to think about regarding cybersecurity best practices. You don't need perfection, you just need preparation and planning. Turn on MFA, check those backups, update that software, turn on those automatic updates, and just look for some quick wins that will help improve your cybersecurity posture. There are some really simple things that can be done, and just clicking that button that says turn on automatic updates will make such a huge difference and put you in a much better position. And most importantly, for me, I think this is one of the most important points, is train staff on what to look out for. I think investment in a training tool or, something that helps with phishing attempts is really, I think it's really worth it. Like I said before, people, I think, can be the weakest link when it comes to allowing attackers to get into your network. So that staff training is really, really important. Thank you for listening. I hope the presentation was insightful. And please do not hesitate to contact us with any questions you may have.